Hey, what's up, everybody? It is your girl JoJo. I hope you guys are doing good today. I am doing well. So, we have something to chat about today, you guys. I know it's been a long time. I haven't seen you all since Ready to Love went off. And speaking of that, indulge me for 2 minutes. You can skip past it if you want to get straight to the documentary. But I just want to say to everybody who watches my videos, I know I say it all the time, but I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. You guys rock with me, whether I'm here all the time or whether I am sparse in attendance. And I just really want to say thank you for that. Life has really picked up for me since probably about 2020, 2019. And I'm so grateful, but it has really affected the amount of time that I'm able to do my channel. And that part kind of gets me down a little bit. When I was in Texas, I had a weird work situation going on. You know, I wasn't unemployed, but I had a different type of work situation going on. I was hustling and I had more free pockets in the day to do more videos, do more content, record more. I think back to when I was in my 2-bedroom apartment in Columbia, South Carolina, recording in terrible lighting and doing my Mary reviews. I would be up till 3 o'clock in the morning, get up and go to work at 7 o'clock and work both of my jobs and then come in there in the dead of night and record another video. I was so determined to get started. So I've definitely put in my work, and it took a long time to finally get some viewership, but I'm just so grateful for you all. And I want you to know that. And I'm really hoping to get to a point where my life is still up, but I have the free time to either do more content, or at the very least, if I'm going to do less, do more quality content. So I'm just trying to find some workarounds in life, y'all. Y'all know how it is, but I just wanted to say thank you. But today, I decided not to be so nitpicky and, I need to be on camera and I need to do this, and just do the dog on video. That's my problem. Just do the video. So maybe I can get more into that mode. Just do the video. But I was watching a documentary, the Hillsong documentary. It is brought to you by FX, but they are playing it on Hulu. They've already released 2 episodes, and I think another one may come out this Friday. So today is Thursday. I'll see if I can get this up by Friday, child. I can't make no promises. But the documentary was good, and I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to discuss it. I wanted to get y'all's thoughts. So we're going to talk about today the first 2 episodes that came out, and I want to get your thoughts and opinions. And of course, I am going to tell you mine. So let's get into it. All right. So first of all, let me start off by saying that I grew up in Baptist church. All right. I'm talking about old school red book hymnal singing to this day Baptist church. I did not experience the church hurt that a lot of people talk about, but I do have empathy towards it, and I know it happens a lot. And this documentary really brought out a lot of church hurt, but it brought out a lot of modern day church hurt. You know, it ain't that throwback church hurt that you used to hear about people talking about. This is a little bit different, but I would say the pain is the same. I never was really a huge fan of mega churches in general. So of course, a church like Hillsong, I doubt I would have been in attendance because it's just way too many people for me. And because I grew up old school, I was never a fan of what I call skinny jean church. That's the church where the room is dark, the pastor come out like it's a concert, everybody get to wear skinny jeans, the pastor got on skinny jeans, first lady got on skinny jeans, and not a church hat to be found. That's not really my ministry. But after attending a church similar to Hillsong, there was a church. I was working like 2 or 3 jobs in South Carolina, and I couldn't make it to church on a regular Sunday because I would be working. And there was a church called New Spring that had evening service, and they had multiple times. And so I attended. My god brother also sang at the church, so I initially attended to see him sing. And I could see it. I can see why people are drawn to certain environments. I can see why young people especially are drawn to certain environments. And that's essentially what Hillsong was. It was a church where everybody could come as they are. It was a church for that young person that didn't see themselves in that very strict Catholic church or the very throwback Baptist church. You could really be seen or feel seen at a church like Hillsong. And I felt that when I was at New Spring. Even though it wasn't a church that I would attend on a regular, I could see how it would bring in a whole new generation of young people. And so I understand that there is a place for that. But what happens when the mission becomes lost in the business model, because that's essentially what Hillsong was. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I'm just going to try to move through the documentary without getting too heavy in too many of the details like I can do sometimes. But one of the things that I first wanted to start out talking about was how we got here. So we all know who Carl Lentz is. I'm sure we all remember the scandal that came out with him some years ago, how Carl Lentz was this great pastor who, we found out he was having this affair on his wife and all of these different things. And so when the documentary first comes on, you think it's going to be about Carl. And it is about Carl, but it's not about Carl. Like, Carl was kind of the catalyst of us discovering other things that were going on with Hillsong as a whole. So I would almost say he was like the fall guy, but he did do what he did. So I don't even know if I can really call him the fall guy, but I guess for lack of a better word, we can say that. So the documentary really focuses on kind of the cultural issues that exist in Hillsong Church, as well as other churches throughout the world. Hillsong definitely isn't the only one, but I will hope some of these other churches are watching this documentary and saying, you know what, let's make sure we tighten our our situation up. So the documentary kind of has starts out with a couple of different people. You got Mama Jones, her daughter Ashley Jones, a girl named Tiffany Perez. She attended Hillsong College. We had a few musicians and a few other people who are all talking about the day that they came to Hillsong Church and how they felt and how they experienced Carl for the first time and how he was so dynamic and he was so cool and they had never seen a pastor like him, and he was fashionable and he was tatted and he had the deep V shirts, and as Mama Jones said, he could cry on cue. And I can see it. I can see how people would be enamored with Carl. And y'all, I ain't gonna hold you now. When I saw Carl walking around with Justin Bieber, I was like, who is that? Baby, who pastor is that? Okay, because baby, I'm not one of those that just, only attracted to one type of man. Baby, I like all the men's, okay? And Carl Lentz was easy on the eyes to me as well. So that's another reason I couldn't have been up. I can't do no fine pastors, y'all. I don't do fine pastors. If I go to a church and the pastor is highly attractive, I can't do it. It's distracting to me. I'm going to have to attend another church. So Hillsong wouldn't have worked for me for that reason as well, because I can't be lusting over the man of God. I can't be lusting over this man of God. But everybody, I got off subject. Everybody was talking about how much they loved him and how they were so enamored with him. And I know that Carl is working elsewhere now. We'll probably get into that later on in the review. But I always felt like Carl probably was a good person. He just had a lot of things that he needed to sit it on down for a little while. He needed to sit it on down and let somebody pour into him. I think that man and a lot of pastors really just need to take a break. Just take a break. All right. So we have all these people talking about the first time they experienced the church, how they felt the peace that it brought to them and what the appeal was for them. And one of the things that was brought up and what I knew Hillsong to be before I found out it was even a church was the music. Okay. the music at Hillsong has always been a huge draw. It's very concert like, they've got a band, they've got these phenomenal singers, these phenomenal musicians. They even won a Grammy at one point in time. And so one of the musicians comes on screen and lets us know that the daily rate while they did all their recording in the studio was about $180 a day. Now, y'all, I've done a few studio sessions, okay, not solo, with a group, and we didn't get paid, but we already knew that, right? If you are in a group or doing some type of musical production that's winning a Grammy, if you pay me, okay, if you pay me, if we winning a Grammy at this point, and you have all these phenomenal singers, you can't tell me that these people are just solely doing it for the love of Christ. They have to be doing it because they truly love singing, and maybe they want to do a little bit more with it. I'm sure that Hillsong was a good way to get noticed, but Hillsong wasn't giving out no record contracts. They wasn't even really paying the people. And then that moves into another big issue that came up with the church, the volunteerism. I don't know how many of y'all go to a mega church, but if you do chime in, do they pay the people that they have on staff? And I'm not talking about the people who might just do a little bit work, like a 1 or 2 hour job on a Sunday, right? I'm not talking about them. I don't even know if I'm necessarily talking about the ushers per se, but if you're spending the majority of your time at a church, like let's say you're the one do some of the music there, because my god brother was paid, for singing at the church. So let's say that you do some music there and you're doing a great deal of music. And I'm not talking about like a little bitty church. I know little bitty churches will run you $50, for the minister of music. I'm talking about you really are doing music. You are recording music. Your music is being played on the radio. Like, do we not need to pay those people? Do we not need to pay people who are working 4 and 5 services a day as an usher, or as a security guard, or as a parking lot attendant? And I think it's wonderful that people have the heart to do it for God, but to me, the business model is no different than the things that these large greedy corporations will do out here. Keep the lowest amount of workers. All right. The lowest level of workers on payroll, excuse me. Try to get stuff down to the lowest cost possible and pay the people up at the top the most money. And give the people up at the top the most benefits. Because I know the senior pastors and ministers and all of that, I know they were getting paid. And so I think that's where a lot of the problems started to come in with the church. And, when you have this dynamic pastor, because Carl Lentz was the face of that church. I didn't know who Brian Houston was until after Carl Lentz, was fired. Carl Lentz was the face of that church. And I think so many people were so enamored with him, and so many people were enamored with the style of Hillsong, that even if they were discontent with what was going on within the church, they remained silent about it, when all of this really, the lid could have blew off of it a long time ago. And honestly, even if they would have said something, who would have believed them, right? People would have been like, well, if you doing stuff for God, I really get tired of that, you guys. I'm one of those people that I believe people should be paid. I believe people should be paid, like, within reason. But I just believe if people do a job, if people do a service, if it's given part-time hours, they should be paid. All right. And again, I'm not talking about one Sunday service, you working at the church for 2 hours, you a usher, or, you a hospitality. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you there multiple services. You there multiple days. You doing work all of the time. You feeding. Let's say you work the ministry to feed people. Y'all know how we do. Look how many people go to that church. What kind of dinner they having? And I'm sure they don't have dinners like that, but y'all know what I mean. Like, this is different. This is different. But y'all let me know what you guys think about that. What do you think about people being paid within the church? Not really so much talking about the pastor, because then we could get into a separate conversation about megachurch pastors and their pay, which I'm not going there. But I'm just talking about general service, lower level people that are most of the time treated as volunteers. Do you believe they should be paid? Because that was a big point, one of the major points on the documentary. All right, now after we get into this whole volunteerism, we start getting into the money, because y'all know people got questions about the money, including me. And they show a clip of Brian Houston saying that he doesn't do a requirement for the tithing. He doesn't know how much his parishioners are tithing. And he's very elusive in this interview about what kind of money the church is bringing in. And even the investigators on the case, like the people who, the TV reporters and the people doing the deep dive into the Hillsong church, even they don't know exactly how much money this church makes. Like everything is very elusive. Everything is very tight-lipped when it comes to Hillsong. All they know is that there is an expense account. That expense account pays for Brian Houston's travel, his clothing, of many fancy items, as well as other senior pastors. They do have an expense account. They also talk about, I'm sorry, I got lost in my notes. Hold on, just sorry, you guys. They also talked about how they just don't have a lot of visibility around the flow of money coming into the church. They're just, it's giving Scientology. All right. But see, Scientology at least they'll let you know how much you're going to need to pay for these courses. Speaking of Scientology, you guys, I forgot to say, I passed a Scientology center in Spain, and this woman came up and talked to me and asked me if I wanted to do Dianetics, but I didn't speak Spanish, so it was a fail. But anyway, not fluent Spanish, not like her. She was moving, baby. I only know a few, Buenos Dias and all that. I don't really get in. I don't know as much as I should. So, anyway, though, but it's giving Scientology. Like, where is all of this money going? Y'all opening up churches, y'all recording music, y'all got a whole college. Where is all of this money going? Okay, who is the one that's getting paid? But you guys know, so often with religious organizations, they're protected by certain tax benefits and certain laws, and people, organizations can't get into their money like that. There's not a lot of governance around religious organizations because of the tax exemption, and because they're a 401, whatever that I believe 401c, is that it? C3? Because they're one of those, they don't really get as much governance as a regular business would, even though the church is very much a business. Now, people get offended when I say that, but church is a business, all right? Church is very, and it needs, I think that when it comes to the money part and when it comes to the governance part, like checks and balances, it does need to run a little bit like a business, okay? And the reason why I say that is because a lot of times what happens I've seen happen in really small churches is there is no business structure. And so the pastor is taking the collection into his office and getting it counted privately. And there's no checks and balances around, can they vote the pastor out? There's no bylaws. You get what I'm saying? So there does need to be a little bit of a business structure, but you don't need to be running around here running like a Walmart. All right? Because it's still about God. This is still a church. So, yeah, y'all let me know your thoughts on that too. Okay, we done talked about the money. We done talked about the business. Let's move on to the next thing. Now, I don't know, y'all. This college sound like a sham. Like, what? I need to look it up. I'm going to look it up for the next documentary. I got to put a note in my phone to remind myself. But what kind of degrees are available at Hillsong? Like, I know that it's probably like a Bible college and like theology. Matter of fact, we can look right now. I'm going to look while I'm talking. But what kind of degrees are available at Hillsong College? And Tiffany, okay, one of the girls that showed up in the earlier part of the documentary, bless her heart, Tiffany thought she was going to go to Hillsong College and become a pastor. And I'm not laughing at her like that, but I am laughing at her like that because we find out in the documentary, one of the ladies talks about how Hillsong was founded on evangelical conservative principles based on the Pentecostal faith. And y'all know y'all Pentecostals get down with the get down. All right. I ain't gonna go there with y'all because y'all not finna wrap me up in them tongues that y'all like to speak in. I'm not going there with you Pentecostals today. But this church, founded by Brian Houston, was founded on his background, which was an evangelical Pentecostal faith, very conservative. And so even though the church probably looked very liberal, probably spoke very liberal, because even in interviews, Carl Lentz was very, welcoming of the gay community, welcoming of people that came from other religions. I've heard him do different interviews, and he definitely doesn't go there the way a lot of conservative pastors would. But the founding is still the founding. And the founder of this church and the head runner of this church is Brian Houston. And his thoughts and beliefs are quite conservative. And so the fact that women were attending Hillsong College in hopes to be a pastor, they didn't know. Okay, they thought the college was like the church they were attending with Carl. But no. I could have told you that you were never going to be a pastor within that church. There's a lot of churches, actually, even some of the most liberal churches, where they're not going to let women step up into those kind of leadership positions. Now, you can be a first lady, you can be a youth minister. I have seen a female co-pastor, but I have never attended a church that was where the woman was the head pastor. Never. In all of my years of living, I've never seen it. And it's almost like an unspoken rule, especially in the Baptist community, that you're not going to be running your own church. I feel like if a woman were to try to step up and run a church, and I'm just going to use South Carolina, I don't think the membership would be there. I don't think people would be comfortable. And I'm not saying this right, you guys. I'm not saying this right. But even I have it in my mind where I don't know how I would feel. And I know some dynamic lady pastors. I think I was saying female, y'all. I'm in the military. I don't mean no disrespect. We say that here, and it's kind of in my brain now. But I know some prolific speakers that are women, and I still don't know, because of how I was brought up. I think it would take me a while to get used to that, like sitting up under a woman as my pastor. And I'm just being honest. Please don't throw the daggers at me. But as a woman, you're going to have to be a helpmate all up and through there. And the clips that they showed of the women, honey, that's all it was given was, we got to be here for our men. We got to be here for these boys. We got to uplift these men in the name of Jesus. They wasn't saying it like that, y'all, but you know how it goes. All right, now y'all, let's just go ahead and get into a little bit of the nitty gritty. I'm gonna jump back to a few things, but let's just go ahead and get into some stuff. Okay. Y'all, who is this man? Who is this man? I'm telling y'all, when Carl popped up on my screen, I was like, excuse me, and I hope I don't sound ridiculous. I'm gonna just say it, but I don't know who this man is. I don't know who this man is. Listen, I don't know what Carl been going through these past couple of years, but I'm gonna tell you, God been dealing with Carl, because this ain't the man. This ain't the pastor that we saw walking around on that stage with the V-cuts, okay, and the shorts and the V-cut shirts and he still got the tattoos. But I was like, Carl ain't missed a meal. Look like he been eating. He done grew his hair out. He got a bob. He got a little bayang. He's aged, which we all do, but he did not look like the same person to me. I did not know who that was. But a lot of times when you go through something and you experience something, you kind of take off of all of those things, you know. He's when you hear what he was talking about and the things that he was doing to keep up that image, I can see how now that those chains and those weights are off of him, he could remove all of that. But the speaking is still the same. The crying, y'all. That lady talking about him crying on cue had me weak. I had to rewind a couple of times. He's still crying. He's still, full of emotion. He's still very much Carl. All right. So I was surprised to see him on the screen, even though I didn't really pay attention much to the cover of the documentary, because I told you I didn't know who that man was. So I didn't pay attention to that being Carl on the cover of the documentary. I was shocked when they panned the camera to him and realized that he was going to be speaking. It was like watching somebody take the stand in their own defense, right? So, like I said earlier, Carl was kind of essentially the fall guy for, not the fall guy. That's not the word I'm looking for. Basically, like, he was the catalyst. Like, his firing caused a lot of people to look into Hillsong even further. So Carl, they get into a little bit of his backstory, and I want to point out a few things about Carl that I think led him to where he ended up with that scandal. Not making excuses for him, baby, because we're not doing that, because he could have stayed single, but not making excuses. But I just wanted to talk about a few things. So one of the things that he begins to talk about was just his origin story and how much he really wanted to preach. He had that look, that Backstreet Boys type of look. Met his wife, relationship went really quickly. They were saying I love you within 2 weeks, and then they got married at the age of 23. Ding, ding, ding. Number one. All right. Now, I'm not going to say it's a red flag, but I'm just going to say it's something to be concerned about. Now, I know young couples who get married and they have made it, but anybody who got married young will probably tell you that there is a period. And I'm sure it happens with people that are older too. But when you're older, you're a little more assured in who you are. You've been with yourself, and I don't know, like you changing, but you're not changing like that. That 23 and 25 is a different person. Then you go from 25 and 28 is a different person. Then you go from 28 and 32 is a different person. And then around 32, 31, 30, you settling in, right? You pretty good. 30 to 32, you settling in. But those 20s are such a dynamic time. And imagine filling all of that in with also your brain is not fully matured yet. So you still ain't really, your decision making still ain't firing off right. Then we're living in a totally different time. This ain't back your mama and them, your grandmama and them day. This is a new day. All right. Relationships move differently. Relationships work differently. There's a different level of autonomy within the relationship. Then you got, you got the fact that you're having children, and then you're in the church. It's like layers on top of layers. You ain't no regular couple. You are now a pastor. So you already are being held to a higher standard. Then you're in a marriage. Marriage, in my opinion, is a ministry. I do think it is a type of ministry, but when you are a married pastor, now you are in an upper level of ministry, and it's just so much for, I would say, two young people to be experiencing. So Hillsong, now Carl didn't start out having such a large church, but once he got there, he was there, and he said that at one point he was preaching seven sermons a day. Like, who is it crack? Because it would have to be crack for me to continue going for 7. Baby, I could barely do 7 hours, let alone 7 services throughout the day, and all this emotion and just just think about the emotional toll that would take on a person. So I just think there are a number of factors to be looked at when it comes to dealing with Carl and everything that was experienced with him in this affair. But not just the affair to me is like like a smaller section of the story. Just the workload and just the starry-eyed brightness that he had towards preaching, and how he seemingly was never like, I would think at Hillsong you would be in touch with some pastors that could give you the real, but you guys know a lot of times with some of the older generations, some of our grandparents or even our great-parents, well, not my great-grandparents, child, they'll give you the game. But a lot of times, I felt like older people wouldn't tell us their struggles. And so therefore, when it came time for us to grow up, we weren't really given the clues and the details that could have helped us along the way. And so it seemed as if the way that Carl was talking, nobody gave him the other side, what I call the dark side. There's a dark side to every situation, no matter how beautiful it seems. It's a dark side to having a lot of money. It's a dark side to get married older. It's a dark side to get married younger. It's a dark side to having kids young. It's a dark side to having kids older. You know what I mean? There's a dark side to everything. And I feel like nobody really warned him of the perils and the struggles that came with being a pastor, the perils and the struggles that came with being a young married pastor. And he even said in the documentary, like, they told us to get married, but they didn't tell you that marriage wasn't going to curb your appetite, that marriage wasn't going to cure your urges, and marriage wasn't. I was like, baby, now, common sense could have told you that, but you know what? It probably didn't. At 23, probably not. They did discuss a couple of affairs, and that's why I said I was going to bring up old girl that went to Hillsong College, Tiffany Perez. Tiffany Perez was a nanny for the, what was the name of the family? I just had it pulled up in my notes. Oh my gosh, I'm frustrating myself. Okay. I think the last name was Kimes. She was a nanny for their family so that the wife of that family could be a nanny for Carl and his wife's family. Carl ended up in a compromising position with said nanny. And so that was one of the other affairs that were brought up in the documentary. I don't know if more are to come or not. His wife, looking at his wife really broke my heart. I'm not gonna lie. It really broke my heart. She is an extremely strong woman for still being there. I don't know. I know that a lot of women, a lot of women stay. Right? A lot of women stay. A lot of women look at it. Look, we got these kids. They have 3 children. Let me correct myself. We got these kids. We built this life together. We got all kind of other stuff going on. I don't know who else you think I'm about to be with. I'm staying. Right? But it's something about that affair with the nanny. Somebody that's in my house. Somebody that's around my children. Somebody my children love. My children have an admiration for you. You're a part of my children's life at this point. And you messing with my husband? Girl, all this pain out here, this what you decided to do, right? And I ain't blaming the woman. I'm just saying that's just my thought, as a woman. And then I'm looking at my husband like, and all this coochie out here, you had to mess with you had to get with, like, y'all remember Sex in the City when Charlotte was like, and the whole time I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I can't lose the nanny. When she thought her husband might be having an affair, she just like, look, don't mess up my help now, because you can't keep it in your pants. And that turned out not to be true on the movie. But in this situation, it was very much true. And later, the woman who was their nanny did come out and say that Carl had abused her. Okay, she came out and said that she was abused and sexually and emotionally To which Carl says, let's be clear, baby. It wasn't nothing that went down that wasn't consensual from two consensual adults. And I believe it. I do. I do believe it. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say about that. But were you surprised to find out it was more affairs? I really thought we were just going to focus on old girl that was going around doing them interviews. Let me tell you something. And see, that's why I say his wife is a very strong woman, because you going around doing interviews about you and my man messing around. Like, it's one thing for you to tell me you cheated. I know who the girl is. We embarrassed for a couple of months. No, this girl getting her check on. She getting her money on. This is who you chose? You ain't got no better picker than this. I got somebody out here who gonna embarrass everybody. But yeah, I was surprised to find out that there was another affair. I promise you, I did not know that. But it seems that maybe in the next documentary, I do hope they get into a little bit more of how they got to the point where their marriage could survive. Like, was there counseling? Did you all have a separation period? How about the kids? But, you know, I think the documentary probably is more so focused on like the culture of Hillsong and how it led to certain things. So they might not get to that. But I just want to say kudos to y'all for being able to put your family back together. I mean, I know it was no easy feat. And then I know sometimes when you've been through something with somebody, it's hard to leave. Like, you know, where I'm going to go. Like, we in this public scandal, like, child, we might as well try to stick it out together. But kudos to them for getting their family back together. And I hope they continue to just, you know, raise their children, do the best that they can. But that wife, girl, you a real one. And I'm going to tell you how I knew she was a real one. A lot of husbands, you know, they'll do something, but then they'll mention something that wasn't going on at home, or something they needed, or something their wife didn't do to kind of, you know, cushion their own blow. Baby Carl got up there and said, my wife, who was of perfect moral character. I said, oh, you had one of them. You effed around and effed up with one of them. He said perfect, okay, moral character, which let me know that if Laura has ever done anything to Carl, he ain't never heard high nor low of it, because he said my wife of perfect moral character did not deserve that. God, running around here perfect and still getting cheated on, boy. You better be glad you still got a wife, Carl. Now piss me off. I can't even look at my notes. Whew. All right, well, let's move forward from the affairs. All right, y'all, I almost forgot one last part. I can't believe I almost forgot it. The whole Black Lives Matter thing. So there is a portion of the documentary where they discuss some of the fallout that happened from the Black Lives Matter and them trying to do things in the church to address diversity. And so you kind of get two sides of a story. You got the black members of the church, and then you get Carl's story. So I understood both sides. Basically, the members of Hillsong, specifically in New York, felt like the ball was completely dropped when it came to promoting diversity amongst the leadership at Hillsong Church. Now, when you go over to Carl does not believe that is what happened. He believes that he and members of his team tried everything within their power to promote that, and they did make it a front movement. And I can see why Carl took offense to that and why he stood on his square with it, only because Carl did actively speak in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. They even had a clip of him saying during one of his sermons, like, we know all lives matter, but right now we're talking about Black lives, and there's nothing wrong with saying that. He said it in interviews. So I understand that he was in support. But where the disconnect is happening, and you can see it within the documentary, is I feel that Carl, in his mind, believes that his heart was in the right place, And he did everything that he could do within his power to make sure that the changes happen. I don't believe that Carl is guilty of not acting, but I do believe that Carl is guilty of promising more than he could deliver. Because after the whole Black Lives Matter conversation, he pulled his members to the side, his Black members. They had a meeting, and he wanted personally to know, what can I do to improve things around here? Like, what can we do to show you all that you are valued, and we want you to be a part of this church. We want you to be a part of this family. And people began speaking out about the things that they needed. And I think that Carl, I think his heart was in the right place, but you know, Carl, he had to have realized at that time, and maybe his members didn't realize it, but he knew that he was nothing more than a well-paid show pony for this church. I mean, he had to do as he was told. And so if he knew that about himself, you would think he would know, I can't really make a whole lot of changes here. You know, like, it's not what I say goes, to an extent. But maybe he had faith in his team and in other people surrounding his team. Maybe that he thought they all had the same thought process, same ideas. Maybe they had talked about it. But ultimately, it is the people at the top of the top who are going to make those decisions. And I don't think it was in Carl's hands. So I understand why he says that he felt like they did everything that they could do. But I also understand why the members of Hillsong, the Black members of Hillsong, felt like the ball was completely dropped. I totally understand both sides. And to me, it was just a matter of Carl just biting off way more than he could chew. All right, y'all. I think I'm going to actually end it right here. Of course, we could talk about like the celebrities and all of that stuff that was involved. No, I think I'm actually going to end it here and see what happens on part 3 and 4. I think I've talked about enough. I've introduced enough. Everything else is just kind of stuff that we have talked about and heard before. I do think next week we're going to get into a little bit more of Brian Houston, who is the founder of Hillsong. And I just get the heebie-jeebies when Brian Houston is on the screen. I just don't. It's something about him that gives me the no vibes. So I am going to try to get this video together and get it posted and try to give you guys something worth looking and listening to. And then we will come back here for parts 3 and 4. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.